Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to this special Majlis. It is special also because we don't have just one guest to celebrate, but two. So we are doubly spoiled today. And so a very short introduction. I met in the informal way as usual, and for those of you who are new to the Majlis format, we will have our scholars, our guests, talking shortly about themselves first, and then to give their talk on the topic advertised. So I met Laura as a friend of a friend, Bianca Spedo, who is here, over a decade ago. Laura is Southern Italy at its best, and I can imagine a higher compliment than this. She is vitality and creativity incarnate, someone with whom we cannot be bored for a millisecond. And it's thanks to Laura, that I met Godefroy, who is a giant in our field, as you all know. Though he is indeed tall and looks like a sculpture by the best Walloon artist of the Gothic period, or an aristocrat from the 19th century, he's anything but cold. His noble gentleness provides a lovely explanation why noblemen can be called gentlemen. Laura, Godefroy, we are delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this presentation.
Okay, I switch off my camera. Please go ahead as you play. I mean, my
So I think the best thing to do is to share right now our presentation with you, because we will start from some pictures. But okay, let me just try to, okay. So is it good for you?
Yes.
It is working. Sorry, that's why we were a bit late, because we struggled for this with 15 minutes to make this work, but it looks working.
No, not at all. Ah, no, yes, maybe from here. Okay. So we can, I think we can start. Okay. So the aim of this, can I start? The aim of this Majlis, as conceived by Istvan, is not only to present the result of our research, but also to retrace the paths that have brought us here, the personal and academic journeys that have shaped the way we look at these materials. So to begin, I would like to show you two images that in their own way tell part of this journey, and they are personal and meaningful to our research because they both capture the strange and fascinating transformation that occur when knowledge and people travel and meet. Then we have a ruby, which is not a ruby, and a grave, which is not a grave. The picture you can see here is where our journey together, me and Godefroy, I and Godefroy, started. So this is the grave of Timur in Tashkent, in the mausoleum of Gure Timur in Samarkand. During the conference, we took this picture during the conference where I met Istvan again after several years. And in the picture behind me and Godefroy, there is a dark tomb attributed to Timur, but the real burial place where his remains lie is located in the crypt beneath the splendid cenotaph of dark green jade. What the camera captures here and what history hides are not the same. And like this grave, the famous Timur ruby is also not what it seems. It is not a ruby but a spinel. And instead of Timur's name, it bears its title, Sahib al-Kiran, the Lord of the Conjunction. As modern research shown, Timur himself never owned this jewel. Its substance deceives the eyes, but its power lies in the story. It tells a story of transmission, reinscription, and transformation. But today, we will not talk about the ruby or the grave. We don't want to deceive you. We will talk about a book strangely linked to both the ruby and the grave, but also to our personal stories and the way they crossed and met. The book, the ruby, and the grave remind us that what appears to be simple translation of symbols or titles are often a creative reconfiguration, and this is the main topic of our research. Mine and Godofroi's within the Mosaic project. The text is the Mujmal al-Hikmah, which is said to be a Persian translation of the Rasail Ikhwana Safa, and here I and Godofroy meet. As you may know, Godofroy is one of the foremost experts on the Ikhwana Safa. And I will give the chair to Godofroy for his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Can you move to the next slide? Okay, so here we are, and here I am. Maybe in case you didn't know, I'm a great fan of conjunctions, and what you can see here is me waiting for the next one, which will be, and that will be the next slide, in 2026, on the 12th of August of 2026, there will be a total solar eclipse, and it will be visible only, and in totality, only for a few people in Iceland and in Spain. And so you will know already where I will be on the 12th of August, 2026. But then I would like to speak about, conjunctions, human conjunctions and astral conjunctions. Human conjunctions, I have to say first that meeting with Laura 3 years ago was an absolutely auspicious conjunction, definitely. And to speak on astral conjunctions and so on, I will need to go back in time to the time in the year 1991. And we are here in Oxford at Pembroke College. At that time, I was a very young scholar. I had just finished my master in classics and in Oriental studies at UC Louvain in Belgium. And very surprisingly, there was at that time, it was the beginning of the Erasmus scheme. And at that time, quite surprisingly, there was an agreement, a convention between UC Louvain and Oxford University. And so when I saw that, okay, gosh, this is great. I will have the opportunity to spend 1 year at Oxford University, the place to be, isn't it? In the company of Samuel Johnson and his teapot and that sort of things. And already reading things like, and if you move the slides, the Ikhwana Safa, I was at that time working on epistle 36 of the Ikhwana Safa on cycles and revolutions. And I was very lucky because at that time I was also able to have tutorials at the Oriel Institute of Oxford University with Fritz Zimmermann, who is a great scholar on Greek and Arabic philosophy. So everything was, and not only tutorials, but a tutorial specifically devoted to the Ikhwana Safa and to this epistle 36. It really was helpful in translating with me this epistle. But suddenly he said, it was the first week of that academic year, he said, but Godefroy, by the way, in addition to the Ikhwana Safa, what are you interested in? What would you like to study in Oxford? And I said, I remember very well, I said Plato. He said, Plato? You must be joking. At Oxford University, we never read Plato. We only read Aristotle. So you are definitely in the wrong place. Well, that was a bit of shock. And he said, okay, but I have perhaps a solution for you. You missed the place. The right place was not Oxford. It was a place in London called the Warburg Institute. And there you will meet with people who do Plato and the things that you like. But by the way, every week they organized with Charles Burnett, a famous authority, they organize a reading class on kind of things, the Warburg Institute. So they take an Arabic text and they compare to the Greek and to the Latin, and you will enjoy it very much. If you want to come, please, I will be there also next week. And the following week, I was there attending my first reading class at the Warburg Institute. I was extremely proud of being there, but I'm very impressed because there were Fritz Zimmermann himself, there was Charles Burnett, and there were a lot of people there meeting for this reading class. And for me, they were all wonderful experts, and obviously I was not. And they had prepared the text, I had not. So for me, it was really dramatic. These two hours of reading class were very, very complicated because it was, I very felt miserable in my attempt to translate. I was making a lot of mistakes in Arabic. I wasn't able to pronounce correctly the Arabic, a lot of mistakes in Greek and a lot of mistakes in Latin and in English and whatever. So very complicated. And you know this kind of things when in the reading class, you try to prepare, you try to anticipate when it will be your turn, and you concentrate very much on a phrase, and then it happens that the guy before you does a few extra sentences and you missed it, and you are again that sort of thing. And it went on very complicated, very stressful for me. I was in a state of panic, and it was really a kind of disaster. So but at the very end, I heard Fritz Zimmermann and Charles Burnett in the corner commenting on my poor performance, but saying, well, it was a very brave attitude. And for me, this was the best compliment I could have it here. It was amazing. And so when they asked me, Godefroy, would you like to come back next week for the next session? I said, definitely. Yes. And next week, the reading class went a little bit better for me. And the following year, I was starting my PhD under the supervision of Charles Burnett at the Warburg Institute. So a dream come true. And what about, that's the next slide, my dissertation was about Annus Platonicus, the great cycles of the universe, this idea that at the very end, time is cyclical, and at the end of these great periods, all the planets come back into conjunctions in a kind of alignment as they were supposed to be at the beginning of the universe. So the locus classicus, the fundamental text is Plato, Timaeus, and I try to follow this concept, very typically Warburgian study, from Plato to the Renaissance, through the Middle Ages, and involving also the Arabic literature. That was so in 1996 when the book was published. And if you move to the next slide, I think that's the last slide of my own presentation. That was last year. So after 30 years or something like that, we were able, all the former PhD students of Charles were able to present him with a book that we had written together, and to offer him on the occasion of a special, well, on a special occasion. It's another, for me, it's also a kind of conjunction. You have the sun, which, and that is Charles Burnett, and the six planets gravitating there, something like that. And that's it. And then we will come back for the Sahib Kiran. But now I will give the word to Laura once again.
So contrary to Godefroy, my story is not a great story of academic success, but it's a story of a woman who, after years, after many years and much difficulty, perhaps through an astral conjunction of her own, found her way back to where she had always wanted to be, studying, reading, and working with manuscript. And here you see me when I was a BA student in Naples. And I was always with my Arabic, Italian vocabulary, always with me. That's why you see this picture, because it's very familiar. It's familiar for many people. And on the right, okay, this is the day of my graduation with my father. And I think he was the same age as I am now in that picture. Here is the first field experience in Iran, which marked my fascination for Persian studies, for the transmissions of sources, manuscripts, and for traveling too. After my MA, I studied as a PhD student in Syria, in Damascus, from 2003 to 2005. And it was those years in Damascus were the most beautiful, I think, in my life. So beautiful that I store the pictures of Damascus so well that I can't find them. That's why I'm just proposing you a few pictures of the library cards, Al-Assad Library and IFEAD, which at the time was IFEAD or IFPO, so it was the French Institute for Arabic Studies. And you see here the Assad Library card. So my thesis was on the Abyssinian tradition in Persian and Arabic, and I focused on history of sciences, and particularly on the history of the sound as a physical and mathematical phenomenon. But after my PhD, I completely changed my life because I had to come back to Italy for my children, who are no more children now. They are 18 and 20. But so from the 26 to the 22, as I told you, I completely changed my life. I worked as an immigration officer and as a mediator, intercultural mediator in Bari, my city. And there I faced migration flows, and so I met people from all over the world, from Afghanistan, Tunisia, or Senegal, whatever. And in this period, I faced a lot of stories, and I learned a lot. I learned resilience. I learned the need of understanding, but it was a very tough period of my life, and I have to admit that I had some shocking experiences, and so I reached a point of exhaustion, also a real burn-up, and then I decided to dedicate myself to teaching. I have been teaching for 8-9 years as a secondary teacher, with a permanent position at school. Right now I'm on leave. and my domain is Italian for foreign people and for disabilities, for disadvantage. So, which is another way to cope with transmission and translation, and to not just between languages and cultural words, but also between intellectual words, because I'm helping different ways of thinking, learning, and living to meet people. So finally, I returned to academia, perhaps for a conjunction of the stars, a humble one, not a big one. And after so many years, I joined Finland project with Godefroy de Calate, who is here, and I worked on the transmission on the Juana Safa in Al-Andalus, and on music as a mathematical science, and I started studying also Judeo-Arabic materials. That collaboration led me naturally to the Mosaic project, where I now study the Persian adaptation of the epistles of the Brethren of Purity, the Mujmal al-Hikmah. So the text we will see later, okay? And these pictures, the picture you are seeing, were taken in Hyderabad. So the first one, I was cooking with people, and in the second one, I was attending a formal meeting, and all for the purpose of finding a manuscript in Hyderabad in Asafia library. So, and I think they gave you the meaning of how I really love to adapt and to connect with people in a playful way, but also, if I really need, in a serious way. And so searching for manuscript in India, after a few months of my journey there in India, I have found Istvan in Tashkent at the conference of Association for Iranian Studies. And here you see me and Godefroy and Istvan. They were talking seriously about the conference, but that meeting was so I was so happy to meet again one friend of mine after many years. That so I took this this picture because it also represents me. I think that humor and friendship are also part of what keeps research and people alive, and it's just me. So, and I think also that if you have understood when I'm speaking about conjunction, you will listen how I'll talk about conjunction, transmission, and transformation. And but I think also Godefroy, for me and Godefroy is not only transmission, conjunction, and translation is not only about it's not only an academic topic, but it's also a personal topic. So I hope we gave you this impression through these pictures and through our life. And so now to begin this share exploration, I will leave the floor to Godefroy, who will introduce the Rasail Ikhwan Safa, the Epistle of the Brethren of Purity, and his presentation will bring us back to the origins of this encyclopedic tradition, to the cosmological and ethical framework that shaped so many later reinterpretations, including the Mujmal al-Hikmah. So, Godefroy, now
Thank you.
to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. So yes, I will try to briefly introduce you to the epistles of the Brethren of Purity, the Rasail Ikhwan Safa. If you can move a little bit this slide. So if I were to define what the epistles are, I would say it's definitely a medieval encyclopedia, and it's really an encyclopedia. It's perhaps the best representative of Islamic encyclopedia well, I mean, for that period, certainly. It meets all criteria to be defined as an encyclopedia. It also raises lots of problems in chronology of authorship. We will not touch that here because it's very, very complicated. It's not really in line with our subject. It has definitely a strong ideological commitment, and that we will have a look at that very soon. And this is very important, it was very influential, much more than usually admitted thus far. So we can move to the next slide. So it's an encyclopedia because it's very well structured. It touches a lot of disciplines, and it is very well organized in the form of epistles. That's why for the name, the Rasail, about 50 epistles grouped under 5 big sections, 1 mathematical sections, 1 natural sections, 1 section on the science of the soul and the intellect, and another one, and the final one on divine science. There is a sense of progression in philosophy, of course. So next slide. Here, a quick look at the individual epistles. You can see that under the mathematical sciences, you have, of course, mathematics, the quadrivium, and with geography in addition. But then you have logic, which is here introduced. Yeah, that's okay. The second section on physics, it's very Aristotelian. If you look at the titles of the first epistles of that sections, it's really Aristotle. But then you can see that there are also other types of disciplines which are dealt with as part of this second section on physics. Then we move to the third section on the science of the soul and intellect. So perhaps the framework is still very Aristotelian, but the inspiration is definitely more Plato or Neoplatonism here. And of course, I highlighted in red the epistle on cycles and revolutions, the one I introduce you to when I was talking about my time at Pembroke College, Oxford. And I think if you go and move the slide, that's the result. So I published originally a translation of this epistle with commentaries in French, but that was on the basis of the Beirut edition, which was not critical. And then as part of the ongoing project at the Institute of Islamic Studies to have a critical edition of the whole corpus, I published, of course, the one on cycles and revolutions. And if we go through the fourth section, the last one, perhaps the most complicated, the more esoteric one, we can also see that there are different epistles, including in the very end, one very famous, well, for those people interested in Ikhwan Safa, on the quiddity of magic incantation in the evil eye. We have also, with friends and colleagues, published, it is now in 3 versions. One was published something like 10 years ago, a short version. There are another 2 versions which are going to be published this year or next year, very long ones. But my point, my sense is that these epistles, none of these three versions is genuine in the sense that I think it was not made or written by the same people who did the rest of the corpus. Next slide. About this editorial project, I just want to recall here what Farhad Daftari said when the project started. He defined it as the most comprehensive and academically complex collaborative project undertaken by the Institute. And then you can see, yeah, it consists of the critical edition of the whole corpus, annotated English translation, international collaboration. We are something like 20 people involved in this big and huge project, and involving also the collation of about 20 manuscripts, and it's still on. It started on in the year 2008. It's not finished, but now it's almost completed. And it's very complicated because the tradition turns out to be, the manuscript tradition turns out to be even much more complex than expected. Next slide. So, in addition to these four, well, the manuscripts with this list of subjects, the Ikhwan themselves in Epistle 7 offer a classification of the science. I will go very quickly on this. They divided sciences into three big categories. One which they call propedeutical, and which is only made of science that are, according to them, only useful for the everyday life. And then on a par, the two big types of sciences, the religious conventional on the one hand, and the philosophical and real on the other hand. And of course, as philosophers in Islam at that time, they tried very hard to reconcile the two things, saying that in the end, these are two ways to go to the ultimate reality. So we can move that. Well, we can skip this because it will take us too long. This one also, and the last one. So this is the theoretical division of the sciences for the philosophical part, and you can see that it more or less corresponds to the four sections as we have it in manuscript, but not really, because, for example, there is one section that is missing, that is replaced with another. Logic, which is now found under mathematics, was in this programmatic scheme a separate section. That's kind of things. It also shows that the text was the transmission of the text was a very complicated one, that probably it was done over various generations, and we absolutely do not know by whom and where, and this will remain a mystery, I think, forever. Next slide. Regarding the inspiration, the Ikhwan Safa quotes from a lot of traditions, Greek, Persian, Indian, Jewish, Christian, Islamic, but then almost never quote verbatim from a text. They reuse and they readapt this material to their own perspective, and the tendency is very, I said, esoteric. That's quite clear. It's not always very easy to define who they are following, but sometimes they show that they are very Pythagorean authors. Otherwise, they are Neoplatonist, but they are, of course, very influenced by Shiism, especially Ismailism. We can find Sufi Sufi things in the Rasail, and well, very hermetic also, and occult, which is at the core of the new project Mosaic. Next slide. So turning to the influence they had, it's important to notice that since the Rasail were not very orthodox, what we find as explicit reference to the Rasail in literature is either by opponents, clear opponents like Ghazali or Ibn Taymiyyah, or avowed followers, and especially the Ismailis. And you can also find explicit references in historiography with people like Ibn al-Athir or Haji Khalifa in Ottoman times. But this is only the explicit reference. It's only a very little part of the iceberg. Then you can see that there are references, but there are much more elusive references. And I take here one, but there are many of them. I have observed, it's Joseph ibn Zadig in Al-Andalus, the Book of Microcosm. I have observed that the path towards this great, indeed awe-inspiring wisdom is to gain an understanding of the writings of the pure philosophers. Well, that's quite explicit. But if we move to the next slide, you can see that very often people only refer to the Ikhwan al-Safa in a very elusive way. I use the word shibboleth because, for example, it's quite famous that the Ikhwan al-Safa, the Rasail, are full of this kind of phrases. Maybe your soul will wake up from the slumber of negligence and the torpor of ignorance. Or another one, know my brother, may God stand by you as well as by ourselves with a spirit coming from him, that, etc. Well, if you see in later authors these kind of phrases, just pay attention and you will probably discover that it's a kind of disguised reference to the Ikhwan al-Safa. And this is what I tried to show in an article I published something like 6 or 7 years ago on the Andalusi philosophers, and not only philosophers who were inspired by Ikhwan al-Safa. So this is so it's very elusive. It's like an eye wink. It's allusions for those who are able to understand. Okay, next slide. The circulation, I just show you here a few of the manuscripts that we are using for the project of critical edition. The earliest one is the Atif Effendi, so from the end of the 12th century, which means that there is a gap because the Rasail Ikhwan al-Safa are supposed to have been written probably in the 10th century or even about part of it before that. So there is a huge gap between the Rasail and the first manuscript that we have. And then we have a lot of them, but Laura will tell you more about that later. Now, yeah, I mentioned Al-Andalus in this study on, well, not only in this study, but I put that on the form of a map showing all the people that, according to me, may have been influenced one way or another by the Ikhwan al-Safa. Of course, it's a map. It's very sketchy, and all these people were traveling a lot, so it's very difficult to place a scholar on and to identify with a place. But this is just to give you a broad idea. And if we move to the east, well, the same thing happened. You have a lot of people, and now we are discovering very many people in Persia, of course. That's very at the center of our project now. The Rasail Ikhwan al-Safa were even translated, but only a very few epistles were translated into Latin in the Middle Ages, but otherwise not. But they circulated very widely in Arabic, and then, as we will see, in Persian translations, and later on Turkish translation, and so on. And then the next slide.
Yeah, the next slide is.
And then we turn back to Laura for the next slide.
Yes, now I think we reached the focus of our talk today, which is around a ruby, which is not a ruby. And so I will start asking you if you know that the most iconic jewels in the British Crown collection, the so-called Timur ruby, is not a ruby at all. It is a 352-carat spinel. This very stone has traveled along imperial road from Safavid Iran under Shah Abbas I to Mughal courts of Jahangir and Shah Jahan, then seized by Nadir Shah Afshar after his Indian campaign, and finally taken into the British collection through the East India Company. Across these empires, it bore successive Persian inscriptions, each one rescribing its owner into a chain of sovereignty, a chain that continued under British rule. When the gem was presented to Queen Victoria and mounted in an interchangeable necklace with the Kohinoor, the famous diamond. And yet, according to modern scholarship, Timur himself never owned this jewel. So the connection is legendary rather than historical, a later projection that turned the stone into a token of Timurid charisma. Fittingly, it does not even bear his name, but the title of Sahib al-Kiran, the Lord of the Conjunction. And so the inscription you are seeing here is from Farrukh Sihar, one of the Mughal emperors who was used to call himself as the third Sahib al-Kiran. And in this inscription, he says, see, this is one of the 25,000 gems from the collection of the Sultan Sahib al-Kiran, referring to Timur. So even the name of Timur doesn't appear in this gem, in this jewel, in this ruby, which is not a ruby. So this small detail is a telling one, because calling a spinel a ruby reminds us that what we take for granted in history, names, titles, and even materials like this ruby, often hides more complex stories. The title Sahib al-Kiran, which is also the main focus of our talk today, is well known in Timurid and post-Timurid context, especially in Mughal context, but also in Safavid context. Yet, while its imperial and dynastic uses have been studied extensively, its doctrinal and cosmological foundation, so the way it links sovereignty to the heavens, has received far less attention. The focus of today's talk is a Persian encyclopedic text known as the Mujmal al-Hikmah, the Compendium of Wisdom, which is often described as a simple Persian translation and abridgment of the Ikhwan al-Safa Rasail, but as we will see today, the Mujmal is not just a natural translation, because it transforms and reframes this encyclopedic model of the Ikhwan al-Safa into a new cosmology of power. One that introduces for the first time an explicit and systematic theory of the Sahib al-Kiran, the Lord of the Conjunction. A ruler whose right is aligned with planetary conjunction, especially those between Saturn and Jupiter. This doctrine was completely absent in its Arabic corpus. So in this cosmology, kinship, prophecy, and cosmic cycles are tightly interwoven. The Mujmal presents a model in which the appearance of rulers is inscribed in the movements of the heavens, and in which history itself becomes a reflection of celestial time. But what is a conjunction? What does it mean, the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter? And as you may see in this slide, in this slide you can see the closest visible alignment since the 1226 of Saturn and Jupiter. So this is the conjunction simulated by NASA in the 2020. So such events were not mere astrological during the 1226, so the here of the closest visible alignment, but it was a potent symbols of renewal, a marker of new prophetic and dynastic, a marker of prophetic and dynastic cycles. So now let's return to the Mujmal, and from the Mujmal we have a long passage on the Sahib al-Kiran, and as I have said before, maybe we are facing the first doctrinal explication of what is Sahib al-Kiran and how it is related to this conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. And we read at the end, such an individual is called the Lord of the conjunction, his descendants spread out, just as in our cycle Adam, peace be upon him, was the first. Wherever his children settled, their lineage continued, and among them great leaders emerged until another Lord of the conjunction appeared. So keep, please, this passage in mind as we proceed, because what we are tracing here is the birth of a doctrinal idea, the conjunctional theory of kinship, and its transmission from an encyclopedic framework into a political imagination of Timuri and Mughal words. In the Rasail Ikhwan al-Safa, there is no mention whatever of the Sahib al-Kiran. This absence is decisive. It forces us to reconsider what the Mujmal al-Hikmah actually is, and its compiler here in this slide, who calls himself an Akil, so a transmitter, even admits whoever has read the Arabic, you see here on the left, compendium of the Mujmal al-Hikmah, the compendium of wisdom, and then reads this Persian version, will see that most of what I have said is not found in that original. So this single sentence says a lot. Not only is the Persian Mujmal based on a version we do not possess, an Arabic version, but most of what it contains, as the transmitter, so the Nakil says, wasn't even in that supposed source. So in the Mujmal, we find this is a declaration that the transmitter, the compiler, is not just translating literally the Ikhwan al-Safa epistles, the Brethren of Purity epistles. So therefore, the Mujmal is not a mere translation or a summary, as I have stated before, but a creative reinterpretation and ideological reframing of an older encyclopedic model to serve new cosmological and political purposes. And I have to, maybe I didn't tell you that the Mujmal al-Hikmah it's very difficult to locate the Mujmal al-Hikmah because is a compiler rest anonymous. We don't know who was he, and we don't know when the Mujmal al-Hikmah was compiled, was translated. Maybe there was before, as a compiler said in this excerpt, maybe there was before an Arabic abridgment, sorry, of the Brethren of Purity epistle with the title of Mujmal al-Hikmah, which was then translated into Persian a few times. We don't know, but this so according to the manuscript history of the Mujmal al-Hikmah, the only date we are sure about is the beginning of the 13th century. So when the first manuscript we have is dated, and which is dated 1247, if I remember well. So, as I have said before, so the Mujmal al-Hikmah is part of this big transmission of the Ikhwan as-Safa in a passionate word, and when reading it, it seems that its doctrinal framework rely on the old Ikhwan as-Safa, but we can also read something new, and which correspond to a mystical sense, an esoteric trend, which make this translation, this abridgment, a threshold between the old brethren of purity and what we now call the new brethren of purity. So the vast network of scholars with esoteric and mystic inclinations, and here are a few exemplars of them who were active in Mamluk, Timurid, Safavid, and Ottoman times, and who chose to identify themselves as the new brethren of purity. They declared themselves the new brethren of purity. So maybe we are facing, with the Mujmal al-Hikmah, a period of passage from the old brethren to the new brethren of purity, because I remind you that the Mujmal al-Hikmah, so the probable dating of the Mujmal al-Hikmah is the 13th century, at the beginning of the 13th century, and with Akhlati and Turka and Bistami, we are in the 15th century. So it means one century after. So, but coming back to the Mujmal itself, okay, we have to say that the Mujmal al-Hikmah, it follows almost formally the structure of the Ikhwan as-Safa, the Rasail Ikhwan as-Safa, as the Ikhwan as-Safa Rasail epistles is divided in 4 sections, as also Godefroy showed us. So the section on mathematical sciences, natural sciences, and the sciences of soul and intellect, and the divine sciences, Ilahiyat. But in this part, which is under our studies, is the part which we are in which we are focusing most, is it's so the author, the compiler, it seems it doesn't follow the Brethren of Purity epistles even formally. Why? Because the 10 epistles are no more existent, and we have one epistle divided in 10 chapters, and the titles of the chapters and also the content of the chapters is quite different. It doesn't refer to the original Arabic corpus. It seems that it relies on it, but in a different form, because here in this chapter, in this epistle, the only epistle here, we can see how the cosmological issue is very more than important, and how this cosmological reframing of this part, these epistles, is reframed in order to legitimize legitimize rulership. And this rulership here is a rulership linked to the astral conjunctions, is linked to the cycles, to the conjunctions, and especially to the conjunctions of Saturn and Jupiter, as Godefroy better than me can explain you, because it's not that simple.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will try. So indeed, so this is a theory which was very important in Islam. Muslim authors inherited it from Sassanid times. It's a Persian theory originally. So maybe you can move to the next slide. You can see, but this is from the Rasail. So usually people like Abu Mashar, the greatest astrologer of the Middle Ages, and others like the Ikhwan al-Safa themselves, identified three types of conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn: a big one, a medium one, and a small one, depending on the revolutions of the two planets. Because after 20 years, that's the small conjunction, the two planets come back again into conjunction, and in astrology, this was supposed to coincide with the appearance of a new ruler on the royal throne. Then after 240 years, this is the medium conjunction. This was supposed to bring a change of dynasty and a change of rulership, but on a large scale. And the big one is the one after 960 years, but it's very often rounded to 1,000 years, taking advantage of the thing between 960 solar years, more or less equal 1,000 lunar years. And this conjunction was considered to be the most important because it was considered to announce and to herald a real change of religion. In the Rasail Ikhwan al-Safa, you have this type of cycle, a prophetic cycle of 7,000 years, divided into 7,000s. And the Ikhwan al-Safa goes as far as to identify not only prophets to each one of the the millennium, but also specific planets. So they were quite esoteric as well. But then we can move to the next slide. And what is quite strange, in one of their epistles, they announce to their partisans what is supposed to be the conjunction that will mark the end of the period of concealment, and it's very smiley here. They tell, among the features of our brethren is that they are learned in the field of religion, that they know the secrets of the prophecies, and that they are well trained in the philosophical disciplines. When you meet one of them and seem to note integrity in him, tell him something that will please him and remind him of the recommencement of the revolution of revealing and awakening, as well as the dissipation of worries for mankind from the transfer of the conjunction, and it's quite clear that it's Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, from the sign of fiery triplicity to the sign of vegetal. Well, it's very astrological here, but so it's supposed to be a very important conjunction that they are promising to the partisans. Next slide. What is different when we come to the Mujmal is that we find here a kind of expansion of the 7,000 year doctrine. They speak about a 49,000 year prophetic cycle. It's a kind of expansion of what we find in the Rasail, but which is not found as such in the Rasail. So I will not enter into too much detail here, but there are parallels for that. And it's interesting to see that one parallel is Nasiruddin Tusi, who is more explicit about that, and he says, I will read that quite rapidly, the founder of the religion which came into existence during the first cosmic cycle of 7,000 years was Adam, and therefore the people of this cycle refer to Adam and are called the Adamites. In the cycle of every prophet, the period of the manifestation of the exoteric dimension of the religious law is called the cycle of concealment, Dauri Satr, and the cycle of every resurrector, when the manifestation of the esoteric realities of the religious laws of the prophets occur, is called the cycle of disclosure. The cycles are ordained in periods of 1 millennium, and each cycle lasts 1,000 years. Once a series of millennia has begun, every 1,000 years a resurrection occurs. When 7 times 7,000 years, that is 49,000 years, have passed and the 50th millennium begins, there occurs the resurrection of resurrections. During this millennia, the cycles of concealment and disclosure rotated like night and day. So it's interesting to see, because it's supposed to be very contemporaneous of the Mujmal al-Hikmah, and it's also in Persian. So when we turn to the Mujmal al-Hikmah in itself, I will also perhaps read this one. Through the influence of the stars and the properties as manifested in conjunctions and cycles, people sought kingship and took control over the world. Prophets appeared, summoned people to God, established divine laws, and guided creation. You should know that no prophet ever appeared except from a noble lineage. There were either princes or descendants of prophets. The origin of their tribe lie in a conjunction or a cycle, wherein an individual rises, seizes power, makes people his subjects, collects tribute from them, and crushes those who disobey his command, leaving nobody to defy his authority. Such an individual is called the Lord of the Conjunction, Sahib Kiran. His descendants spread out just as in our cycle, Adam, peace be upon him, was the first. Wherever his children settled, the lineage continued, and among them, great leaders emerged until another Lord of the Conjunction appeared. Okay, so next one. Read also perhaps this one, also quite astrological. Perhaps you can move back to the one we were.
Yeah, sorry. That's fine.
Okay.
So it's related to the first.
It's also astrological, very much in its presentation. The 10th, 7th, and 9th houses, as well as the laws, possess an immense power. This individual becomes trustee of God and the vice regent of the absolute truth on earth. The power of his soul becomes such that he acts upon the 4 elements. An angel in human form appears to him. The Sharia and the Sunnah stem from him. Angels speak with him. The creatures of the world submit to him and accept his religion. He attains sovereignty. The power and properties of the celestial sphere become inherent in him. His body is a king among bodies, and his soul a king among souls. His reign endures according to the law of his ascendant, his wisdom, and his good fortune. And then I will leave the floor to Laura again. Yeah.
Okay. So as we have seen, so we find here, if we compare all the sources, the primary sources, we really find here the first description of the Sahib al-Kiran. Who is the Sahib al-Kiran? And it seems that according to our researchers, that this title started to be used during Timurid period, and also, I have to say retrospectively, even during the Timurid period. I want to say Timur was called Sahib al-Kiran 100 after this description, and later on the secondary literature started to refer to Timurids also to other emperors from Timurid period as Sahib al-Kiran, but this was retrospectively. In any case, the title of Sahib al-Kiran became an hallmark of cosmic legitimacy adopted by Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal rulers, for example, Suleiman the Magnificent, Shah Ismail, Shah Jahan, and its political use probably began with Timur. So we see in this picture Timur, in this picture, sorry, in this painting, Timur with Jahangir or Shah Jahan, I don't remember. So its supposed birth date, so the birth date of Timur was likely even retrospectively adjusted to coincide with a conjunction. And here we find some coins from Mughal, Qajar, Safavid periods who show us how, starting from the, especially starting from the 16th century, with Safavid, the title of Sahib al-Kiran was used as a title for rulers. And for example, I want to say Shah Jahan is himself the second Sahib al-Kiran. Farrukhziyar, which is not here, the third Sahib al-Kiran, contending the place with the Safavid Abbas II, and even Nader Shah Afshar, which was obsessed by Timur, called himself Sahib al-Kiran, just for giving you an impression how the title was used during Timur period, retrospectively for describing Timur rulers, and during Qajar, Safavids and Mughals, but also with Afsharids. So we may now ask, could the Mujmal al-Hikmah have played a role in the transmission of the Sahib al-Kiran doctrine? Everything we have seen so far suggests that it did. In its fourth chapter on divine sciences, the Mujmal explicitly links the title of Sahib al-Kiran to its astrological foundation, describing in detail, as we have seen, the short, medium, and long cycles of Saturn and Jupiter. This is the first evidence we have. It stressed the noble lineage, as we have already read, as a condition for becoming the Lord of the conjunction, and it moves effortlessly from prophets to rulers. And in other words, so the text doesn't not merely describe cosmic cycles, but it translates the cosmic cycles, the cycles and the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, into a theory of legitimate rule. The manuscript tradition of the Mujmal al-Hikmah can confirm the role that the Mujmal itself had in the transmission of the conception of the Sahib al-Kiran in the following centuries. Why? Because from the 13th to the 19th centuries, copies of the Mujmal circulated widely across Anatolia, and we are talking about 150 copies we have of the Mujmal. So he moved from across Anatolia, Iran, Central Asia, up to India. Many of those manuscripts were produced in courtly and scholarly context at a temple at the court of Bayezid II and Mahmud I Ottoman courts. So we are sure from the secondary source that so Bayezid II had a few copies of the Mujmal al-Hikmah in his library, according to Atufi library list. So it means a lot for us. And from the 16th century, something new occurs. So, and we have noticed that among 150 manuscripts, about 17 manuscripts from the 16th century start reporting this declaration, which I will not read, but in this declaration, should I read? No, I read it. In this declaration, so the copyists added in the 16th, starting from the 16th century, I repeat, because the timing is important for us. The Mujmal al-Hikmah is a compendium, but it is likewise cryptic and burdened with superfluities. Therefore, by the decision of the exalted assembly of Sahid Bahaddin Sahif al-Muluk Shuja al-Mulk Shams al-Khawas Timur Gurgan, at the end, it was decided that this humble one should translate this book into refined Dari, removing what is superfluous and renewing what and revealing what is hidden. So we have no confirmed historical figures matches the Bahaddin mentioned here, and the reference to Timur might not even point to Timur Elang, but possibly to other figure like Togai Timur, for example, but I don't think so. Why the title Gurgan perhaps should have been added later. But now the key point here is that probably Timur Gurgan and Bahaddin in the 17 manuscripts from the 16th century are just a later fabrication. This suggests that the Mujmal was not just preserved, but reimagined as part of a Timurid legacy, aligning its cosmological content, because as I have showed you, so the last part is, the most part of the last section, divine section, is for the most part about cosmological changes and about the Sahib al-Kiran. And so it's aligned. So as I was saying, is a fabrication, and this suggests that the Mujmal was not just preserved, but reimagined as part of a Timurid legacy. So, and it raises the question of the Timur question. So, another element for understanding the Timur question we are studying with Godefroy. Another element to consider is the sharp rise in surviving Mujmal manuscript from the 17th century. As you can see here, we have 44 copies dating from this period. And if the Mujmal had shaped the first the figure of Timur as a Sabi al-Kiran, How should we interpret this sudden proliferation? Was it simply, I ask myself, a phase of renewed I ask myself, was it simply a phase of renewed coping, or did the text acquire new relevance in a political and cosmological climate eager to revive Timurid symbolism? And I think it is, because the 17th century is the century of Mughal Empire, of Safavid Empire, of Farrukhsihar, Shah Jahan, of a lot of Mughal emperors who used the title of Sahib al-Kiran. So we close now. As we began as an esoteric theory of conjunction, so as what began as an esoteric theory of conjunctions became over a century a political theology of kinship. And if we return finally to the ruby, which is not a ruby, its own trajectory, apparently from Timur, then from Safavid to Mughal, from Afsharid to British hands, mirrors that of the Mujmal al-Hikmah. They have the same trajectory. Both moved through empires and languages, constantly reframed, acquiring new meanings while preserving the same aura of celestial legitimacy. The spinel, material and luminous, and the mujmal, textual and conceptual, are two facets of a single chain of imperial imagination, where symbol and substance converge, and where the authority of rulers, like the brilliance of the stone, is forever aligned with the stars. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So this talk was indeed a brilliant, which is a brilliant. So thank you very much for it.
It's brilliant because of the spinel, of the ruby, just because of it.
No, that because of the talk, and yes, we cannot call it a ruby, which is a ruby. I was considering it. Okay, so I close the recording and open the session for discussion, questions. Thank you again.